Now when I paint, you'll see that they're all very slightly different, which is really cool. And look at that. It's making a really cool effect. I'll make it bigger, make some bigger gouges going across it. That's pretty good. Welcome back to the final part of the texture painting mini-series of the anvil. There was an easier way to say that, I'm sure. This is where we finished at the end of the last video. We've got a polished top, we've got a rugged, worn metal side, and in this part we are going to be adding in something which is really going to give it its texturing character, and that is the scratches, the little bumps and scrapings and smashings and all that stuff that's really going to make it look awesome. So first things first, we need to give it another image texture, because this one is working well for our mask, but we can't really use the same one because we want it to drive the impacts, like it's going to drive the bump mapping. And if we made this one drive the bump mapping, then it wouldn't look right. So we've got to create a separate map. So I'm going to go new image, and I'm going to call this one scratches and damage. And this one, the last one we made was 3K. This one, I'm going to make it 6K. So just doing that times by 6 is going to give us that 6,144. So now, the color as well. I'm going to make that solid white. It's always easier if you do it here than trying to figure it out later. But anyway, I'm going to hit OK, and look at that, white image. Now, if I were to go into the texture paint mode, drop that to that, it's gone. Okay, our image has disappeared, and both of them, the reference image has changed as well. It's highly annoying. It's just the way it works. So if I wanted my reference image back, thank you, it's nice, that's good. And I also want my image back that I just created. So that's called the scratches and damage right there. The reason it's bringing up that one is because that's the one that's selected. So I need to add in another image texture node. Don't connect it to anything yet. We're just going to select scratches and damage, and then Control-Shift-Click on it, and we're now viewing it. Wonderful. So, in the last video, we made a splatter brush, which looks like this. Why is that going so slowly? Shouldn't be that slow, surely. Yeah, that's really slow. Anyways, this splatter brush, I'm going to use it to create the, you can sort of see it here, but it looks like they polished down like a rugged surface, and they got most of it away, but there's a few little areas which are still creeping through. So what I'm going to do is, I'll make this full size. Full size is, I'm going to paint. Oh, there you go. So it's not going as slow as before. And I'll turn off the symmetry so that it doesn't have that, what's that effect? The scary guy in the Batman movie, he wore on his head the Roix something mask, where you see shapes in the, whatever. Someone will say it in the comments, I'm sure. They always do. But now that I've got this big black area here, if I swap it to be white and then set this to add instead of multiply, now when I paint over the top of it, I'm painting away most of it, but I'm just leaving in a few little bits like that. And that's a pretty cool effect. I found that out accidentally when I was trying to erase something that I did with the splatter brush, and I thought, hey now, looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to do a few of those across here. This brush, by the way, remember it's set to random, which is how it does that splattery effect. Every time you paint with it, it gives you a different part of the texture. Set that to add, and let's just paint across. So you don't want too much of it, obviously. Don't go overboard. Honestly, I think the first time you paint something, it should be like an experiment, because you really don't know what you're doing until you've worked out the kinks, so to speak. And I think that it's something that I can't really teach that well in a tutorial. Like, I've painted this anvil now. This might be the 10th time that I've painted it because I have to rehearse the tutorial and have to get the look right and everything. And every time I do it, I learn something new. And so the method, like the first time I made this anvil, it was totally different. But through a process of just making it and remaking it and redoing things, you figure out better ways of doing it. So yeah, don't get too particular the first time you're painting it, because I think honestly you'd be better off if you redo it at the end. I know that sounds like I'm giving you more work at the end of it, but it's a tip for the artists that want to go pro. It's something that I've learned like coincidentally through doing tutorials, that by repeating something again, you learn how to do it the next time. I guess it makes sense. Anyway, the next thing that I want to do is I want to give it, if we look at our reference photo here, it's actually kind of hard to see it, but I can imagine that if this was a real anvil, you'd be hitting it with a hammer, so there'd be little dents across it. It looks mostly smooth here, but you know what? I'm going to give mine its own character. I'm going to make it look like it's been hit with a hammer. So I'm going to create a new brush. So first of all, I'll just select the old brush, this text brush, text draw, and then I'll click that little plus button, and let's call it battering. A real battering. Okay, now if I draw with that, it's looking like that. Now I want it to look like it's a hammer. So that, see that how it's like, it's really deep in the middle, but then it's like smoothed off. That is defined by the curve shape right here. Now if I was to use this cone shape instead of the one before, it's a little bit more solid. So it's sort of like if it was a hammer. You can go all the way with that, but I don't think that looks very good. It's like a pixelated edge. I don't like it. So I'm just going to use that one. It's a very minor difference anyway. The other thing I want to do is I want to change the strength of it right down to 0.1, and I'm going to use, this is my tablet, again, this is the Wacom Intuos Medium, a link is in the YouTube description if you want to get it. Any tablet, really, they're all pretty much the same. But with this, I'm setting it to 0.1 with the pen pressure, and now what I want to do, underneath stroke, I want to give it some jitter, so that when I draw across it, it's giving it like a random sort of displacement as I draw across it. And as well as that, I want to increase the spacing like that. So now I'm just very lightly just touching across it, and I'm just creating little marks where somebody has hit it with a hammer. I can change the size of my brush, make small impacts, and I'm just going to do a few here as well. And this because it's going to be driving the the bump map of our thing, wherever these little hits are, it's going to create this like it's going to look like a real battered object. So if you've ever seen like a metal shield, obviously not a real one, probably we don't live in those times anymore, but you know, renders of them, photos of them, getting that sort of hammered look to it. This is a way that you could do it. Is giving it this this little brush. All right, a few over here. You could obviously do more detail if you had the time, but who has the time? Oh, actually, no, I do need to do a few on the side here as well. So besides just just this. Oh, actually, I should have done that other thing as well. Got to do some splattering. I'll set it to multiply. Yeah, so besides just the top, we also need to give it the sides. Gosh. There's almost no point in trying to talk whilst you're thinking. Doesn't come out right, I always find. Okay, now I'll set this to add, swap it over, and let's create that little effect. So this would look really, like if we just left this as heavy as it is, it would look horrible. So the trick is to be subtle. You just want a few areas where it's thick, a few areas where there's tiny bits, and then most of it, it's nothing. Okay? Again, this is something that I've learned from painting and repainting it many, many times. I really wish actually that Blender had layers for texture painting. I think it's something that could really really improve it, like, because we've put hammering layers, we put this little grunge bit on it, yeah, it would really help to be able to control it like the opacity of this battering effect after we've already done it. Because otherwise, like if I want to erase this thing, I'm going to erase all that other grunge as well. So there's not really an easy way to do this. That's why I honestly think like it's one of those times that paid software is better than Blender. Substance Painter, honestly, is fantastic. I think it is really, really good. There's a reason that everybody on ArtStation uses it. It's a heck of a thing. So if you are inclined to go pro or just increase the quality of your work, I have personally found Substance Painter to be really good. And I'm not getting paid to say that. I just think it's really good. The one cool thing that Substance Painter let you do is like you're painting the actual, like you choose here on the left-hand side whether you're painting the color, the displacement, the bump, the roughness. You choose it all there, and you've got layers, you've got masks. It's like using Photoshop on crack because it's painting on a 3D model. It's really cool. And you just can't do that in Blender yet. Maybe 2.8, 2.9, I don't know. Okay, so the battering's done. Good. Let's do the next one, which is the scratches. Hey, so to create a scratch, you could, use this texture draw brush here and, get in close and draw like that. But there's a problem, and this is one of those, another area of Blender's not strengths, one of its weaknesses. When you draw and you do like a fast thing like that, it does these steps and it looks horrible. And I've used the smooth stroke thing because you got a smooth stroke there and that doesn't really seem to fix it. You still get this little juttering effect and it's awful. But I have figured out a better method, and that is to use a texture. So I've got a brush which you can download in the YouTube description, but it's like, I'll show you it. It's the simplest thing. It's just this line. So it's got a sharpened edge on both sides, and it's just to create a scratch. So I'm going to give it a new brush, and on this new brush, I will call it Scratch. Let's make that full size and go texture, new texture. Go over here. Oh, come on. There we go. Texture, brush, image texture, and I'm going to load in that brush. Okay, I tried a whole bunch of different ones for this anvil. This is the one I'm going to use. Different thicknesses as well. Maybe I'll make them all available to download, but honestly, it was like 2 seconds in Photoshop. But anyways, okay, now that we've done that, we should be able to, if I drag this out, oh, okay, I've got the smooth stroke thing turned on, turn that off, and I also want this to be white. Aha, there we go. Okay, now I don't want it to be tiled, so I'm setting it to random, just like before. And I don't want it to erase like with white, so I'm just going to make sure that this blend mode is set to multiply. Aha, and look at that. So now we are doing some scratches. Okay, so let's go full screen. And okay, well, as per the reference here, you can see that where we've got this little table, there's like a scratch pattern that's going like zigzag. Like, so I really like that look. So right here, so this is doing the random thing and it's all going in one direction if I do it like that. But I can set a random angle right there. So if I can set a degree variation of 20 degrees, now when I paint, you'll see that they're all very slightly different, which is really cool. And look at that, it's making a really cool effect. I'll make it bigger, make some bigger gouges going across it. That's pretty good. Nice. And now let's do it this way. So I'm hitting number pad 7 and then 4 to rotate the view because it's only drawing from top to bottom. Like that's the orientation of the texture, but you could change that there if you wanted to, but I just feel like rotating the view. And I'm just going to create, what looks like some scrapes going along this direction. So bigger brush for a bigger scratch. And I'm just hitting it, really. All right. Now, when you have a look at like a real anvil, like it's like a feathered pattern. It's like variations of like scratches. I haven't got time to do the full detail that I would if I was to, I don't know, make an asset for a movie or something. Honestly, I think this is overkill, even for a movie. Like, how detailed do you need an anvil? I run a little mastermind group in Brisbane, which is where I live in Australia. And it was like, yeah, there's actually, you know, the show Shark Tank, right? So there's this Australian Shark Tank version. And one of the guys in it, he's from my area. And so he made this place in Brisbane to like help startups. So I was, you know, hanging around there. And I was like at this party. Some guy had a 1 million user party or something. And so I was just there. And then this guy stopped me. He's like, "Oh, are you Andrew Price?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And yeah, he was like some guy who ran a really successful company. And he was a big fan of my work. And yeah, he was. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you all this is that, for one, it's actually cool to make tutorials, because every now and then somebody, a door opens for you because they've watched your tutorials. They, I don't know, it's cool. So now I know this guy who's, you know, got a successful company, and we're sharing advice and things like that. But anyway, he said to me like, "Man, you are really going at it with that anvil, aren't you? Like, you have just made it this really long series." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's becoming a bit of a thing." But it's funny because I said that, like, he said that after I'd only made like 3 videos of these anvils. And there has been at least 4 or 5 more. So I can't imagine what he thinks now. So I'm doing different angles for these ones on the side, because obviously it can be hit different ways. Maybe I'll make a couple of big ones. That's again something that I learned from like a little ZBrush summit thing. They're like, if you're going to say it, say it. Like, don't mumble. And I think that's really, like, you can do that very easily in texturing. You can mumble, just like do like a little bit of detail like everywhere, which means that nothing has detail basically. So you got to like do a few areas of like high interest, and then a few areas of nothing, and then some areas of high interest. And yeah. So anyways, I'm just messing around now, filling up the time, as I'm sure you can guess, listening to me ramble. But yeah, that's a good, it's an advice I would recommend to everyone. Oh, I haven't got the symmetry. It's because I'm painting so much like over here and then over there, I keep forgetting when I've turned it off and on. But yeah, make sure that you do both sides if this was something that you were going to do in a turntable or something, but I'm not going to do it. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, my advice, I was going to say, make sure you, like, there's so much free training on YouTube, like from ZBrush summits and like Gnomon classes and things. And they've got like industry professionals teaching you stuff. And just because you don't use the software that they do doesn't mean you can't watch the video. That was a mistake I made when I first started Blender. I thought like, oh, well, I can't watch a ZBrush or a 3ds Max tutorial or whatever because I use Blender. But the advice, like, once you know Blender, and you'll be surprised, you probably do know more than you think, you can really use, like, watch tutorials for anything and then take the same advice and transfer it across. So I think that that's like an untapped thing that a lot of Blender artists don't do, is learn from the learn from other softwares, because that's how you escape the pond. You know, being a big fish in a small pond. Blender's a small pond. The industry is huge and they're doing crazy stuff, and the more you can expose yourself to it, the better. All right, cool. At least it wasn't completely aimless chit chat while I did that. Anyways, now that you've done this, make sure you save it. Save as image, because if you saved Blender and closed it without doing this, you would lose it, okay? So, again, reminder, make sure you save before you close Blender. Save image. Okay, now that we've done that, okay, let's have a look. So, all that texture painting hasn't affected our render at all yet, because it's just all on its own in this little space down here. So it is a black and white texture, right? So what we want this to do is we want it to drive the bump, right? So because we've already got one black and white texture that's driving something, we need to add that together, just like what you would do if you wanted to add two black and white images together. You would have, well, maybe you don't do that often, but what you would use is a mix RGB node set to multiply, and multiply will take the dark values but ignore the white values. So now if I take that, put that into the bottom input there, now if we have a look at this, you can see that we've got both. Okay, so this is the original, like that's the metallic map, and then with the scratches combined on top of it. Make sure you set it to non-color data for everything, basically. Okay, so now I will drive that into that. So remember that the reason this is all complex, we've got two bump maps, is because we needed different amounts for our top part of the shader and different amounts for the bottom part. But anyways, check this out. Now, if we have a look at this, we should see scratches. Haha! Look at that. All over it. That's actually looking pretty good. For something that was just like smashed together while I was rambling about random stuff, it's not too bad. Okay, it's a little obvious in some places, but it's not too bad. So because we've got this in the bottom input, if we want to turn down the amount of opacity, that's what this value will do. It will change the whatever's in the bottom input, the opacity of it essentially. So I can now decide how heavy do I want those scratches to appear. And it turns out probably about that much. I don't know, I might actually go a bit heavier on the bottom one. So maybe, I mean, I don't want to double up on nodes because it gets really messy. And I know that for following a tutorial, it can be even worse. But I do want there to be a different amount on this bottom one. So let me just drag in this and let's turn that up so that just for this top shiny bit, we've actually got more, yeah, harsher scratches. So it shows through on the copper. No, what is that? It's the same metal. It's the same metal, right? It's iron. It's an iron top, but it's shiny. So it'll show through on the top more. Okay, now the other thing I wanted to do, because we've got like that grunge in it, and also looking at the reference photo, you can see that inside the scratches, it's actually dark. So what we could do is we could use this dark, worn brown metal there inside that. And the way we would do that is just by adding it to our polish mask. So if I just do that exact same thing, take that multiply node, drop it in here, and now take the output from the scratches and, all right, let's just go full screen. Scratches and damage all the way up there. And now let's take a look at just those two together. Okay, so this is the mask, and then we've got the scratches underneath it, like that. So now that will be controlling the shaders. Okay, now it's really, really subtle there. So what I want to do is right here, before it goes into this multiply node, I'm going to add in a color ramp node. So converter color ramp, drop it in here. And this will enable me to really amp up the darkness. So if I want these values here to be darker instead of like that washy gray, I just drag over that dark area, that dark slider, the black slider. Drag that across. Now, if we have a look at it, we should see. There we go. So we can now see that where those little divots are, it's starting to look really, really heavy. Like it's, sorry, not heavy. Like it's got dirt inside it, sort of. I mean, you know, you could tweak it a bit more, get it in some of the scratches as well, perhaps. I don't know. It's sort of showing through on the battering bits as well, which isn't what I wanted. So that's sort of, actually that looks kind of cool. That's pretty good. All right, that's not bad. All right, so let's just create that final render now that everything is complete. So I don't want this, I mean, it doesn't really even look like it's connected to it anyway, but I don't want that HDR behind it. So I'm just gonna add in a plane right here. And I'll just make it as big as possible so that it fills the whole camera view, which is good. And I think white is, it's bringing the focus to the floor, which is not what I want. So instead, I'm just going to make it really dark. Even though the anvil's already dark, We've lit it well enough that it should stand out from it a bit, which is good. And then finally, right here, let's just go to 3D view, and I'm just going to add in a couple of lamps because this right-hand side is looking a bit dark. So I'll just add one lamp over here. Okay, and this is just going to cast, pick up some of that detail in the side there. Right about there. I'll pull it out a little further so it's not too obvious. You can see you could spend hours tweaking the lighting and everything. And I'm just making one more just near the front here, just to pick up the detail in the horn there. I'm sure the blacksmiths have a proper word for it. I really feel like I should have done like a blacksmith course or something before I starting this tutorial, just so I know, what you actually use them for, because I feel like I don't know anything. But there you go. Now you could spend, forever getting the lighting ready, but that is basically it. So before I finish, I do want to ask you guys who have enjoyed this series. So I decided to put this whole series online for free, just on YouTube, because I really do believe that YouTube is the way of the future, and that it helps, so many people. But I also, I want to grow the business and expand so we can keep making more tutorials in the future. So we need to make money as well. So I'm putting this entire series, this whole tutorial series, up on Blender Market. I'll put the link in the YouTube description, so if you want to check it out, it's just going to be $10, and you can get all the video files for this entire series, as well as the finished.blend file that you can learn from as well. So if you want to help me out, and even if you watch this whole thing and you enjoyed it, if you could check that out. And it's an idea. I'm trying this as an experiment, seeing if it works. If it doesn't, then I'll have to go to a different method in the future. But anyways, thank you for watching this whole series. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and refer it to a friend if you think they're into Blender. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a future tutorial. Bye.